All right, welcome back, everybody. Got a couple of guests here today from the Grays community. The UFO token, PTGC on PulseChain, they've been pumping like crazy. They've been abducting all the core coins, which I do respect. I've got a little bag that was, started as a little bag and turned into a big one. So obviously, I'm interested. I'm interested in, you got to respect the pump, right? So what's up, guys? Why don't you introduce yourselves?
Go ahead, Banana.
Okay, I'm the Prairie Banana. Been in the eco since January. That's me, Prairie Banana.
What's going on, everyone? The Gray 369 here. Some people call me TG Zen. I'm one of the founders of PTGC and UFO. I've been working on these products for, I would say, around 3 years now. And PTGC's been out for a year and 2 months, and UFO has been out for 8 months. And I'm just excited that Crypto Coffee gave me the opportunity to come on here and possibly educate him a little bit on the system and hopefully some of his followers. So real quick, Crypto Coffee, I just want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to come on here and share these products.
Of course. I mean, thank you for building. Shout out to anybody building out there. It takes a lot of work. And I always talk about the UFO community as like one of those communities that apparently does as much marketing as they do building solid products, because that matters a lot too. You can't just build something and not talk about it, because no one's going to come. And historically speaking, a lot of these tax reflection tokens have a short lifespan. So I was a skeptic at first, and then later on, it really just is a matter of spreading awareness and demand. At the end of the day, number go up is like what people care about. So if you can generate demand for long enough, the tax basically has this effect where it makes people less likely to sell, until the big risk is that there's like a negative cascading loop. But I just see people building on the grays over and over again, and not ditching it for the next thing. So it's hard to tell at the beginning, which projects are going to stand the test of time, but it's been over a year. So well done. Congrats on the pump. And this is, I think, the one part of people's portfolios that they're actually pretty happy about.
Yeah, I am super excited to, see the people within PulseChain have some tickers that are doing decently well, because currently I think everyone that's holding RH tickers only, it's been a pretty extended bear market, and it starts to hurt a little bit. So to have pieces of the portfolio that are performing helps ease the blows a little bit, for sure.
Yeah, it's technically, if you DCA'd the bottom, you could be up right now, but a lot of people are probably break even, maybe slightly up or down. It's been a lot of sideways, a lot of below sacrifice rates, but builders are important in any chain, right? You need people to build alternative products, because yes, you could say, all right, well, all the core coin holders are just rotating their coins around into these different ecosystems. But I mean, the proof is in the chart, right? Some of that demand, hopefully, it was fresh capital. You'd like to believe it. I mean, it's hard to know for sure, but with a chart that looks like PTGC, you got to admit, like, and I'm sure you guys have firsthand experience onboarding new people, getting fresh capital into the ecosystem. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it came in waves. Like right when PTGC launched, we actually had a inflow of outside PulseChain communities coming in and looking at this ecosystem. I believe one for the fun narrative. It's got a fun mascot and theme to it with aliens and UFOs, etc. Especially with media coverage, what's going on in New Jersey right now. It's like very fitting and fun, and it's constantly reoccurring in the media, which I think is good for a theme of a project, because it almost is always relevant no matter what month you are in forever. And then just about like onboarding, what I've noticed is it kind of depends on where PulseChain is at. So people are a lot more willing to come over to PulseChain to chase these altcoins when PulseChain has a couple of green weeks in a row. They see that it's moving upwards and they're like, oh, I'm going to go speculate over here. So when we are moving in an upwards direction, which we've kind of just flowed up and down on PulseChain, it's easier for us to onboard from other chains when we do have some green on the PulseChain chart. But I have noticed that, like, we were one of the first DAOs on PulseChain, and we were able to bring a lot of people over from somewhat a large community on Ethereum that was also a DAO. So we've played into a couple things, I think, to help onboard people to PulseChain.
Oh, nice. What DAO was that?
It was called Cult DAO. It was
yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So when I was creating PTGC and UFO, I was studying hundreds of projects, RH's tokens being the main ones, but I also studied a ton of other projects out there that were successful for reasons and failed for reasons too. And I tried to take the ideas that made them successful and really pay attention to those, and then take away the ideas that I thought were part of their failure, or some of them were still successful. But I was like, well, what could have been done better? What can we tweak? What can we adjust to make an end all be all product? Because I think a lot of people don't actually try to solve the real problems that are occurring in this space. They're just like, oh, what can I deliver quick? What's easy to deliver? But what I tried to aim for is, I was aiming for perfection, knowing that I'm never going to be perfect, but I wanted to strive for it. So I started studying hundreds and hundreds of projects and really paying attention, like, what made this successful, even if it was just temporarily. Was it a theme? Was it a narrative? Was it just hype? Like, what really was catchy?
Yeah.
And even I did this with RH's ecosystem as well. Like, PTGC in turn has a lot of the same features that PulseX does. It has a buy and burn based on market volatility and market volume built into the system. And it also has single-sided staking built into the system, where you can earn just for single-sided staking. Sadly, with PulseX, the single-sided staking never came out. At the design of PTGC, I didn't know that was not coming out. Or I still believe it will come out, but it's just not out yet. But here with PTGC, we have the buy and burn mechanic built into the system and the single-sided staking built into it. But the thing I noticed with the Cult DAO project was it's also a fee on transaction token, and all the fees that they were garnering, they were using those fees with their DAO to invest in other projects. And for me, I thought that was the problem in their design. Why would you want to invest in other projects if you think you have the end all be all right in front of you?
Just reinvest in the same project.
Just reinvest in the same product. And if you think you have it, right? And then not only invest in the same product, like, one thing we do is we also invest in, like, the RH core tickers. But when we invest in them, we're not just holding them, we're adding them to liquidity and burning that liquidity, making it to where we're a buyer who is never going to sell these RH tickers for the rest of the existence of PulseChain. We literally can't. They're sent to the burn address. But now that value is working for us for the rest of the existence of PulseChain. Because with our system, we actually gain value off of our mechanic of this liquidity web. So once we put these RH tickers in there, it's value working for our holders and for our token's price forever. So it's a pretty awesome scenario to where we get to help the RH ecosystem in a way, but also help our own ecosystem in another.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's symbiotic in many ways. Like you said, a liquidity web, you got buy and burn, burning LPs. I didn't know that about single-sided V3. I'm sure Richard will probably add that one day. Is there any chance that the whatever you programmed regarding single-sided LP, would that be enabled on 9-inch today?
No, so it's not V3. Maybe you misunderstood. It's just single-sided staking. So
sorry. Yes, I did. Yeah.
Yeah. So all you're doing is you're taking your holdings and you're staking the PTGC. And when you stake it, you're just earning more PTGC for staking. So you're making an APY that's not based on inflation. It's fully out of a deflationary token, just obviously based on the volume that happens through our liquidity web.
Gotcha. Yep, that makes sense. I mean, that's all the features that people kind of wanted. And then I like that you're taking the good stuff from other projects and really only trying to extract that. The meme value of just UFOs alone, you're right. It's going to be a meme for the whole cycle, for the whole Trump presidency. We see UFOs all over the place. I'll get your thoughts on that situation maybe at the end. That's just fun to talk about. But UFO is a great ticker symbol, I got to say. And a lot of people are simple and they don't actually care about these mechanics, and they start to care after they hold the coin. They start to actually learn what the thing does. When they come in, they just want to buy something because the number went up, or it's got a cool alien logo, or hey, this guy told me this was good. And then they start to figure it out. So I think that's a good call.
I'd like to park on that staking, if you don't mind, just for a minute. It is what attracted me to PTDC. You know, coming from the HEX community, I was attracted to HEX because I can lock those tokens. The staking with PTDC is unique because I call it like, it's like a dynamic staking. You can literally stake it and then unstake it right away. You will pay a 1% penalty. And we've figured out that you'll get your 1% back within about, I think, I want to say, Zen, like 4 to 8 weeks. So it's not a long, if you have a long time horizon, I stake all my tokens, but there is no time commitment. And then you can
What's
also,
the APR?
I've got that right here. And then there's also locking. So I look at this as like, there are 3 streams of income from this one token. You get reflections. And then if you stake, you get staking rewards. And then if you want to lock your tokens anywhere between 90 days and 10 years, you will get also rewards from people that early unlock, and there's a 30% penalty for early unlocking. Let's have a look at the APY.
That's cool. So yeah, just for the people listening, staking and locking is a different thing here. Locking has consequences like HEX. Staking is just, basically changing the state of your tokens, but you're earning yield in both of them.
Yes. The staking APY for the past 10 days has been 1.3%.
Wow.
And it's more than holding APY, which has been 0.4%.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty great.
Yeah. So one thing that is interesting about the APY of the system is it's obviously based on the volume of the system, since these are reflection based systems, buy and burn based systems. They pay out this APY only when the value is actually generated. And that's what's cool is with the standard APY of other products, it usually comes from inflation. And if you don't have new users coming in, that inflation actually turns into a potential price decrease to the protocol. But with this system, the APY is only paid out from an actual buy of that APY. So since there's no inflation coming into existence, it's actually a hyper deflationary product. The APY that's being paid out every single day is coming from actual purchases on the chart every single day, making it so even if every single user sold their APY on a daily basis, it was actually just recently purchased. So there was actual value put into the LP pools to back that APY being paid out. And not only with the purchase of the APY being paid out, but when the APY is being paid out in our fee system, every time there's a transaction, 40% of that fees are going to APY, and 60% of it is going into backing the value of the token. So every single piece of APY is actually getting double back, not only from the buy, but additional PLS going into the liquidity web, making it so the APY has value backing what has been paid out to help with, even if users sell that APY, it doesn't put a dramatic decrease on the chart.
That's great. All these dynamics are very fascinating. I mean, the more you dig, the more you're like, wow, it's all feeding back into each other. But the classic, 2017 reflection token, they're very basic, and it's just it's kind of a game of musical chairs. And when the demand runs out, the whole thing collapses. So demand is one of those things that's hard to program demand. You can have automated buy and burns. You can have automated like adds into the liquidity pool. But at the end of the day, how are you guys doing? I mean, clearly you're doing well. How are you generating that new demand and keeping people's interest?
Yeah, I'd say this is the most interesting thing about our system. RH actually has a video that he talks about this in depth, where he says you can find ways to mimic supply of an ecosystem with buy and burns and burns of tokens. You can actually control the supply. But the hardest thing in really any business or token is demand, right? No one has really figured out how to control the demand side. And the sweet thing about this system is we actually found a way to control demand. We created a system that actually isn't dependent on humans interacting with it, because we've created a liquidity web that is connected to all the cores of the blockchain and ever growing. So as the market does what the market does, so we know what the market does. It moves up and down. That's the only guarantee. Even in a bull market where we are right now, we had a red ass day yesterday. So all we know the market is going to do is it's going to move up and down. But since we've created this liquidity web, every time the market moves up and down, there's always a reaction to that action. And that reaction flows through our liquidity web, triggering our fee system. And then our fee system buys and burns our own supply, making it to where even if no one ever buys our chart, the music will never stop. So what I've noticed, and this goes back to me studying hundreds of projects. The problem and the main failure of every fiat transaction token was when you run out of buyers, you only have sellers, and then the APY stops, the buy and burn stops. And this is the same problem not only with fiat transaction tokens, this is the same problem with every token is in existence.
Yep.
The music eventually stops, the hype eventually stops, and then you consolidate, and 99% of them never go back up. So what we found here, and when I was studying these hundreds of projects, that was still the problem I was running into, is like, you can do all these mechanics that give the project a better chance of success. Like, you want to give it systems that can make it do a bunch of X's, right? You want to give it systems that pays APY just for holding, because after you do all those X's, users are going to take that value that they created to a system that pays them APY. Because if you make a bunch of money, you want to make money on that money. You're not going to just put that money under your mattress and not let it earn, right? You're going to put that money to work. So you want to build within the system an APY, because if you don't, they're going to leave your system and go and get APY on that value. So you want to keep the value in the system. Holding is one of the number one things that creates value in a system. So we want them to stay here and hold, so APY is built into the system. But the question still remains, like, how do you keep the energy towards you? And what I actually figured out is humans are really, really hard to guide and push towards your project. They have emotions. There's always a new shiny object. And what we see in the real world is everything's veering from human workers. It's going to robots. Everything with technology is going from human coders. They're using AI. So naturally, what we would do with crypto is become less reliant on humans and more reliant on mechanics. So when we created this liquidity web, we actually become unreliant on humans, and we're only reliant on the size of the liquidity web that we create. And then as humans come in, they actually just amplify the system and makes it even better. But currently, like right now, our PTGC and UFO liquidity web is at $40 million, and we're at the bottom of PulseChain. But if PulseChain does a 10x, our liquidity web will also do a 10x. So that would put our liquidity web at $400 million. So now we would
Do you
have
mind if
four.
I ask, sorry, how
Go
much of
ahead.
that is tied to like native L1 coins or stable coins?
The majority of the system, I would say 60 to 70% is RH tokens.
Cool. I think you guys popularized the word liquidity web too. I kind of like that word.
Yeah, I think we popularized liquidity webs because we're kind of the creators of this system that's constantly value generating. In crypto, a lot of 99.9% of tokens don't actually generate their own value. They're reliant on a user coming in and putting in that value. So then that user is holding like a claim check ticket, eventually wanting value out, right? And this is what is the problem with most systems, is when you have everyone waiting to get value out, but no outside value coming in, it isn't sustainable. So with this system, as a user comes in, they can actually put their value to work not only for themselves, but they're putting that value to work for the entire system. And when that value is working for the entire system, our liquidity web is constantly bringing in value from an outside source that doesn't require a human to be waiting there with the claim check ticket. And that's what actually creates the scenario where everyone can actually win because it's actual value generating. Most cryptos aren't value generating. It's just waiting for the next user to come in so one can get out. And yeah, the liquidity web term, I think we are the pioneers from and the biggest educators of. We definitely have the biggest liquidity web on chain, and we've been doing this stuff for a year and 2 months. We also, I was probably, I think, one of the first people that started talking about the X multiplier, which RH himself calls reflexivity. And it's been a very, very powerful tool to our system that ultimately every token can use. It's just most tokens don't have sustainability put in place, so they never actually get to realize the gains of the X multiplier.
Interesting. How do you, I mean, inevitably we're going to have another bear market. How do you see that going for the PTGC ecosystem?
I have 2 plans of attack. One of them is a narrative on PulseChain that isn't guaranteed, but fun to think about, which I'm sure you know about, the PDI narrative. So
It is
I
fun to
don't,
think about. Yes.
yeah. So obviously I don't think that's a guarantee, but we do have systems in play if it is a thing that comes true. We will be sitting very, very nicely. So currently UFO alone has 150, 160 million PDI in its liquidity pool. That liquidity pool alone is worth, I think, $6 million. So just hypothetically, if PDI narrative is true, we would have a liquidity pool with PDI around $300 million. And if that is actually a stable coin, we will have a $300 million liquidity pool at probably a pretty good point in the bull market to hedge us against the downtrend of the whole entire market. In the case that that narrative isn't true, which is completely a possibility, in our system of PTGC, we have a DAO, which is pretty much a fully decentralized automated way for us to have pivotal abilities. So in crypto, a lot of people lock themselves into code and they can't pivot with the market around them. They are just stuck to what they have and they can't adjust with the times. And that actually hurts them for the longevity of the product because crypto moves so quick, they can't actually, as new things come out, as new innovations come out, they can't adjust accordingly. So with our DAO, it's a decentralized and automated way to where as new things come out, as the cycle of the market changes, we can actually adjust accordingly and then make moves based on that. So as of right now, our DAO is mainly pairing with all 8 RH tickers and burning it. Why? Because RH tickers are highly undervalued to our belief. Like we could be completely wrong and fools, but let's say they are undervalued. Well, it makes sense for us to pair it with them as much as possible because it's going to amplify our X multiplier. And let's be honest, like real LP ties are really the only thing that matters in crypto. You can do 1,000x, but if you don't have any value to actually back that 1,000x, it ultimately means nothing. You have one guy that usually wins and 99% of people that lose. But for an example with our DAO, if this PDI narrative isn't true, we have things in play. Like once the market gets to higher levels, it would make sense for us to start LPing with stable coins, right? Because it's going to not only hedge us against the downtrend of the market, but those stable coins will also be a piece of the liquidity web that doesn't move up and down with the market because it's stable. And now the market maker bots will constantly have to bounce off of that stable coin, adding to our reward system and making our value generating system even stronger. The current reason why we're not adding with stable coins right now is we believe the market's still extremely undervalued and we don't want to be anchoring ourselves to the bottom. We want to be anchoring ourselves up high. if P-die narrative is true, we get the best of both worlds. We get like a 45x from right here, and then we get stabilized up at the top, and then we have a massive liquidity pool as well. But that's just not guaranteed.
Well, it's nice that you're, being responsible about the uncertainty there. So this DAO, what's the voting token for the DAO, and how could this basically vote in new LP sources or new pools to be incentivized in the future if things change?
100%. So the way you create proposals in the DAO is you have to be a top 100 staker of PTGC.
I see.
And any person who's staking can actually vote in the DAO, and the amount of tokens you have stake is your voting power.
Cool.
And so let's say down the road, we don't know what's going to happen, but let's say RH comes up with a wallet token. This is just hypothetically, and we want to LP with the new RH wallet token. Well, the DAO can actually make that adjustment and start pushing funds in that direction to, maybe a possible new RH ticker, or, let's be honest, maybe a really good project that's not ours eventually comes out and seems very undervalued on PulseChain, and we want to add that piece to our liquidity web. We can then make that adjustment and go from there. Because a lot of people don't think 10 years in advance, 2 cycles in advance. They're thinking about like what's going on right now. But the honest truth is we have no idea what PulseChain is going to be 4 years from now, 8 years from now. But with this DAO, we're able to adapt with anything that it throws at us, which really no other token can do. Like they're kind of just stuck with what they got, and it is what it is. And that's what really kills them over the sustainability and longevity of their project, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it does. You seem like a smart guy. You seem like you've thought of a lot of possible scenarios. What is the auditing situation, just for people that might be new, worried about the safety?
Yeah, so PTGC and UFO are both audited by Solid Proof. And you can check pretty much those scores, I believe, on their website. And then we also have those in our Telegram too, if you want to look at those reports as well. A feature to both PTGC and UFO that a lot of people don't realize, but it's one of the things that I love the most about the system. It's a direct piece of education from RH. Like a lot of the design of both PTGC and UFO are pretty much like a conglomerate of like my obsession over RH for 3 years of just studying every video and every word he's ever said and putting it in code. So one of the biggest things is self-custody, right? Not picking up pennies in front of freight trains. A lot of people give up self-custody of their token for an APY. They either give up their tokens to exchanges or to smart contracts. So both PTGC and UFO are a system to where you actually keep self-custody of your tokens in your wallet while you're staking. And I don't see really anyone doing that type of stuff. And yes, you could still get hacked, or the code of PTGC and UFO could possibly be wrong. We've been operating for over a year now, so we're pretty battle tested. But what I'm getting at is a lot of people's value gets ripped away from them by smart contracts getting hacked. So when people stake and they put everyone's value together in one spot, and then it becomes like a golden
Honeypot.
city on a hill for hackers. Like, hey, we put thousands of people's value together in this one smart contract. If you hack this, you get thousands of people's money. So what makes the most sense is let's keep self-custody with everyone so their tokens are actually in their hands. RH had a solution to this too. He burns the tokens when they get staked, so then they're not there for someone to hack into and take. So he had a solution to it. I kind of had a little bit of a different solution to it, but they both kind of hit the same principle. Don't store all this value somewhere where it can get hacked.
Very cool. I really like the stuff that I've been hearing. I've learned a little bit about UFO in the past, but it's awesome to meet the actual creator. There's other coins in the ecosystem like 808 and all these other things. Did you also develop those, or do you want to give an overview of what those are?
Yeah, so when PTGC came out, this whole liquidity web idea was uncharted territory. Like no one took this idea on any other blockchain to these levels and really saw what they could do. So we didn't really know like how successful and how well this machine could really run until we actually got there and started doing it in real time. Once we were in it, we realized that the machine was working really, really well, and we wanted to add a few more legs to the liquidity web that we felt like we could trust, especially with like any new project that happens on PulseChain. 99% of them fail, right? Like this is any blockchain, not just PulseChain. This is just tokens in general. So it's really, really risky to pair with brand new projects because we don't know the intentions of the community, the founders, etc. It's really hard to put value towards them. So what we realized is it's probably simpler for us to just create 4 more legs to our liquidity web with systems that we can actually burn the liquidity and trust. But the real purpose of them is just more legs for arbitrage bots or market makers to move into and move value through, with portions of the fees that they're paying in those sub tokens to go back to the mothership, which is PTGC.
Cool. And what are those tokens names, just for reference?
It's Burn, Liquid, 808, and ENRG.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, me personally, if I wanted to, I kind of like to keep things simple for myself. So I'd probably focus on PTGC and UFO. But
That's where I guide people to. That's where all the value is headed, right? So
right,
there are people that degen on that type of stuff because they just can't help themselves. But I do like to make it clear, and that's why I don't talk about them too often, because people, when I start talking about them, they start veering like, oh, look at how cheap this is. And it's like, well, no, like all the value is going towards PTGC and UFO. These are the main focus. Don't get distracted.
the mothership, dude. You guys have thought of all the memes. It's great. It's
Banana, dude.
one thing I think is really cool about the staking of UFO. Right, I look at my rewards and I just get dripped in PLS rewards on top of reflections, on top of trading fees, and you get to skip the tax when you enter that. So I've been bonding some INC to UFO. I don't know. We'll see if that's a good idea. I see you guys have a little pair with PDI, which we just talked about. And then these pools, you're saying these could be edited by the voters, right? Who are the stakers or the maximum top 100 PTGC stakers. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct.
Okay.
So yeah, PTGC, like its liquidity web is completely separate. So UFO, those tokens you see in our farm are those tokens. They can never be changed due to how the smart contract functions. How we created it is it doesn't matter which pair you go into, you'll get the same amount of PLS rewards based on the amount of UFO you enter in with. And you're going to receive a UFO share when you enter in. So you don't necessarily have to chase the pool that's going to pay you the highest APY based on volume. It's actually the team effort. So you can go into any pool that fits best for you. And that could be reasons like you have tons of extra ink and you just want to put it to work for you, or my favorite is EHEX, right? So we included EHEX into this farm because we wanted to give people the ability to earn APY on their EHEX over here on PulseChain, because a lot of people aren't actually restaking their EHEX on Ethereum due to fees and uncertainty. So what we found is with developing this farm, we are doing 2 things. Or actually 3. We're giving people a reason to bridge their Ethereum hex over to PulseChain, which helps with the value of PulseChain. There's 1. For 2, they're now able to put their eHex to work. So instead of just sitting in your wallet and doing nothing for you, you can now earn APY in the form of PLS with that eHex. And the other thing that I think no one's really put together yet is the destiny of eHex is not only in RH's hands, but it's also in our hands of a community. And a system's value, in my opinion, is the community and its liquidity. So right now, EHEX doesn't have that much liquidity on chain, but as hexagons and as RH maxis, we can actually give EHEX its own liquidity, which then bonds it with UFO, which UFO is highly bonded with RH tickers, which will increase the value of EHEX itself just because of Hart's law, with no human even interaction needed. We'll just tug it along up with it, giving it its own natural value over here on chain. And I think that's really important, right? Like we can actually decide the fate of EHEX on our own. Like, and I hope RH doesn't smack me on the wrist for that. But I don't think it has to die. I think if enough of us come together and actually put the liquidity up that's needed, and a lot of people don't like adding the liquidity because of impermanent and loss and stuff like that. But the cool thing about our system is you're going to be getting PLS rewards for doing so. So you're actually farming with that value. So what you want to create is a symbiotic relationship where you are helping EHEX by providing liquidity, but the code is helping you back by paying you a PLS reward. So you're actually incentivized to pump your own bags. And this is a huge teaching from RH and what would give um, the PRC20 copies actual value is you can actually pair them and add liquidity with them and help them rise and move up and down together and give them their value. But we're going to incentivize ourselves for doing so with APY.
Dude, the EHEX pairing with UFO might be my favorite part of the entire thing. I was disappointed in the early days. Everybody might remember the story of EHEX, the Richard Hart tweet, but there was also, I mean, myself in the early days, I tried to teach people, hey, you can bridge your EHEX over and pair it with HEX, just like it says on PulseX.com. Just like Richard Hart put an EHEX, PHEX yield farm early on, but then had to remove it because, so he says, people were emergency end staking to chase the yield farm and being stupid. But I'm glad there's another, I don't want to call it a shiny object because it's more than that, right? But there's another game you can play with your EHEX now. UFO. UFO has been going up a lot more than EHEX, but if EHEX does ever want to have a chance at getting to this mythical parity, or at least pegging at some ratio, we've only got what, $2 or $3 million in EHEX PHEX. I believe there's more than that in EHEX UFO. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, we right now I think it's $1.7 million with EHEX UFO.
Okay.
So we're working our way up. We're not there
there
yet, but it's coming.
Yeah, well, the fact that token accrued so much of the liquidity, where after almost 2 years we could only get $2 million paired to PHEX, and there's not. I mean, still, I still think that is a good option if people do care about their EHEX and they don't want to dump it. You can still tie it to PHEX. You can still earn 10 to 20% APY. I think every time I check, it's somewhere around there. But the advantage to the UFO pairing is you get pulse and you get UFO exposure, and you might get UFO reflections in the future as well.
Sure. And you asked about PTDC APY. The APY for pairing your UFO with an RH ticker for the past 14 days has been 11%. Simply for holding, if you hold your UFO, again, past 14 days, APY 4%.
That's good. Is there a dashboard I could see this on?
There is. I will send you a link to this spreadsheet. It could be a little overwhelming, but yeah.
I was looking for that on the Grace Currency website. I didn't see any APRs, but they are variable, and that makes sense.
Yeah, the APYs or the APRs are very, very hard to calculate because they vary so dramatically based on just the market in general. It doesn't even need to vary on like people buying PTDC and UFO. Just when PulseChain has volume and volatility, it just sends our machine into like hyperdrive. So every time PulseChain has dramatic movements, it all flows through our liquidity web. So because we're so heavily bonded, and then it really increases the APY. And
I almost feel like we owe the audience an explanation of why there's so much volatility when there's a little bit of price movement. Do you want to go into that? Then into the secret sauce?
yeah, so the volatility of PulseChain, like has been actually pretty level, right? Like we've been sitting here below sac rate for quite a time. Like at one point we went over sac rate by a 2x, which isn't that much. But what I believe is going to happen is I do believe PulseChain will be successful. It is technically successful as far as a code base. Like we've had completely 100% uptime, and I think that's honestly enough. But I do believe there's more in store. If that's a 10x, if that's a 100x, you know, who really knows? But even just on a 10x to the upside, we get all the volatility of not PulseChain doing a 10x, but also all the other RH tickers and then all our other connected assets as well. And they all have pumps and retracements and volatility at different times. Like Coffee, you've probably even noticed this on crypto Twitter. For the last year, no one could make up their mind about which RH ticker is going to be the best performer. So they just kind of rotate to each one in cycles. So
Yeah.
every time they rotate, it literally just shoves our machine into hypergear because we have connections with everything. And then obviously the fees come in based on the market moving up and down, etc. And this is going to happen for the rest of existence of PulseChain. If the level that we land in after this bull market is a 10x from here, a 20x from here, a 30x, like we really don't know. It could land right back at this level, honestly. But the thing is, even if it lands right back at this level, we are one of the only ecosystems that got a net positive from the ups and downs. A normal holder doesn't actually generate anything, or any token in general, a holder or a token, RH talks about this a lot. You don't actually benefit from the volume of the token.
Except maybe in
Ours,
PulseX.
in PulseX, you do. It's actually the volume of the whole chain. So
Yeah.
we took that same idea, since we've connected to the whole entire chain pretty much. It's the same scenario. As the whole entire market moves up and down via human swaps, AMA swaps, it's constantly buying, burning a singular token. We're operating off of the same mechanic, and it keeps pushing the price upwards. The nice thing about PTGC and UFO is we're a lot smaller of a cup. So we have so much less to buy and burn. And when you're a smaller cup, like we're a really small community, it's a lot easier to do X's. And we have such a small community that we are actually able to educate the small community on what the system is and where it's going. So we can actually perform to the upside a lot easier. To where when you have a really, really large community, it's really hard to corral everyone on the same narrative, because when you go and fetch the people to the right and say, hey guys, this is a good product, you look over to the left and they've wandered off, you know, who knows where, and they're next thing you know on a different chain, so on and so forth. So by having this smaller cup, it's a lot easier to manage, and then it's a lot easier to buy and burn the supply because it's so much smaller. And then also it's a lot easier to do X's because we're so small. Like the amount of value that needs to go into PTGC compared to PulseX to do a 20x from here is microscopic ultimately. And the nice thing is when you compare the market cap to liquidity ratio, we're actually really high. So we have tons of value in the system to actually back the X's that we're giving.
So are you saying that even back to ratio trading, we see a lot of people, I almost call it ratio chasing, which is usually not a great thing, right? You want to buy the one that's low, but let's say, people are just chasing INT for Hex or PulseX or whatever. And are you saying UFO also somehow benefits from that volume there?
Yeah. Yeah. So you're 100% right. Like the majority of people who are chasing the next RH ticker that's currently moving, they're behind, right? And since they're behind, they're pretty much usually the exit liquidity for the people that started that trend. And they're usually better off just getting every RH ticker, in my opinion, and just holding them and waiting for everything to move up together and not chasing the current green candles. But the truth is this is human nature. This is always going to happen. This is guaranteed. So every time one RH ticker moves up and one moves down and one moves up, since we're connected to all of these, and UFO is connected ratio wise to every RH ticker, let's say Hex goes 20% up and ink goes 20% down in this example. Like users are selling their ink for Hex this week. Well, now the UFO in the pair with ink went 20% down because we're connected in ratios with ink, and the UFO in pair with hex went 20% up. So now there's a price difference between UFO and these two liquidity pools, and now the market makers need to fix this price. So the market makers are going to come in and buy the cheap UFO out of ink and then sell sell it in the UFO pair with P hex. So then when they do that, they're going to be making a income for themselves. This is what market makers do, is they're arbitraging those two tokens together to make value for themselves. They actually do this all day long on every single chain free of charge. They get to make all the money. So what we did is we just put up a toll in front of them and says, hey, you can come and use all of our liquidity pools, but you have to pay our fee. And then they pay the fee, and that value goes back to our system, buying and burning our supply, paying our holders APY, and increasing our liquidity, making it so the snowball gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger over time, and it never stops.
And what's the fee again to route through those pools?
So PTGC is 5%,
Right.
and UFO is 6%.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but you have to keep in mind, so when a market maker does this move, as our liquidity pools get bigger, they have to move more money, right? Because now it takes more money to fix the prices. So if let's say a market maker today is moving $1,000. Well, when they move $1,000, they're actually not paying 5%, they're paying 10% because they have to do the buy and the sell. So when they move the $1,000, they're actually paying our system $100 in value, which is actually a decent amount of money when you start to add it up. But now think about this. PulseChain 10x's. Modestly, I think that's an estimation that could occur. Well, now the arbitrage bot doesn't need to move $1,000. It has to move $10,000. So now the value that we gain off of that movement isn't $100, it's $1,000. So it all starts multiplying out as the chain becomes more successful.
Right. And it would have to be at least a 10% benefit or greater. But
yes, there's a
these
threshold.
bots are going to do that.
Yeah. As soon as the threshold's met, the arbitrage bot makes the move. It's not going to make the move without it being a profitable transaction. This is guaranteed. But as soon as that threshold gets met, the market makers come in and fix the prices, and then we garner the value and bring that back to our ecosystem, making it more sustainable for the long term.
It's fascinating stuff. UFO token has done about a 35x in the past 4 months. What goes up must periodically come down, but you want to give some crazy price predictions for your own tokens?
Yeah, Banana. Can you look into PTGC?
I have it pulled up. I need to be able to share my screen.
Is that cool with you, Coffee?
Of course.
So we have a stats page built by a community member. It's called Look Into PTGC. It was built by Crypto Kong. I don't know if you know who that is, but he built this really sweet stats page, and we can actually run through it if you don't mind. There is some free features to it, and there's also a paid part of it, a premium part that I think he'll allow us to kind of look into right now. And obviously, if users want the premium stuff, you'll have to give Crypto Kong whatever he's asking for that. But there is some awesome free shit or stuff here as well. So,
okay, so we're gonna do a moon map on PTDC with this wallet address, and the site detects.
Yeah, real quick, let's do moon math real quick. This is reflections.
Okay. Or you want? Oh, I'm sorry.
Give people what they want, huh? Yeah.
Go to the moon math.
Okay.
Okay, so
prophecy calculator.
Yeah, so what a term I kind of coined was called the X multiplier. And actually a lot of people even in DeFi don't even know what the X multiplier is. RH called it reflexivity about like 3 months after I started really talking about how the X multiplier works. And he was talking about it in comparison to PLS to hex. So how reflexivity or the X multiplier works is as value comes into PulseChain, and let's say PulseChain does a 10x, Well, naturally, everything that's connected to it automatically gets dragged up a 10x as well, because everything is ratio based. So if one PTGC is equal to one PLS and PLS goes to 10 cents, well, now PTGC goes to 10 cents. When you take out all the outside forces, right? Obviously, we know there's outside forces like buys and sells and other liquidity pools, but mathematically, just basically,
He probably got a phone call.
or mathematically basically just showing how it works. If you take out the outside forces, it's all just ratio based. So any X that PulseChain does, we do as well. And what we've noticed is we can multiply any X we do over PulseChain by the X's PulseChain does. So in RH's example, reflexivity, money flows in the PulseChain. Let's say it's a 10x. That drags HEX up 10x. Well, let's say a portion of that value doesn't stay in PulseChain. Let's say a portion of it actually trickles down to HEX. So now HEX gets to double dip those X's. It gets the X's that it got from PulseChain going up, and now X's from some of that value running into HEX, which makes it, let's say a portion of it goes into HEX and it's a 4x. Let's say HEX can do a 4x over PulseChain. You can actually multiply the two together. So now HEX just did a 40x. The 4x against PulseChain plus the 10x PulseChain did. And that actually creates a scenario where it's really, really easy to do tons of X's, especially when you have sustainable systems. The thing is, most systems don't get to actually realize any of these gains because they've never been sustainable since the beginning. They die in a week and you never get to see any of this stuff. We've actually got to see this stuff firsthand. When Pulse did a 5x, we did a 40x. We got the X's from PulseChain, and then we did X's over the blockchain, making it to where we can multiply these two together. So what we did is we created a calculator to actually show this real hand. So we can estimate the X's that we can do over the blockchain based on our deflationary tokenomics and our sustainability. If you want to put something in there, Banana.
I put an X factor of 5, and this is a simulation of PTDC.
Can you hear me, Banana?
Yeah, we can.
Here, I think I need to drop down real quick. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Okay.
So this is the PTDC PLS pair. X factor of 5, meaning PTDC in this scenario would move 5 X's against Pulse. And this is Pulse doing a 100X. And we can tone it down if you want. I can do a 10X, whatever you want.
Let's go 100.
Let's do 100. And I will calculate. And bear in mind that PTDC has a strong history of moving up against the Pulse network. If you just go to your DEX screener, look at the PTDC Pulse pair, not in USD, but in WPLS, and zoom out for 14 months. It's rather
I'm
impressive.
looking at it right now.
Okay, so let's
Looks
look
good.
at, I'd say, when that network turns around, woo, it's go time.
You think we're gonna go do another consolidation here? I mean, I know it's all speculation, but I mean, we also just went up so high again in the UFO PTGC. Do you think we'll cool off for a while, or what?
We could. I think that some news might come out this month that we're kind of waiting on, with this decision.
Fingers crossed.
And then with the new administration coming in and just that where we are in the market cycle. Yeah, it could get exciting. Consolidate, I wouldn't think so, but this is crypto and anything can happen, honestly.
Cool. So let's see, the new price is people can just basically calculate how much money they'd make.
X factor of 5, paired token price one. Let me put 100X. I think that was $100. That would not work. Okay. X factor of 5. So PTDC moves against Pulse. A factor of 5. 100X on the Pulse means the final price of PTDC would be 22 cents or 500X potential.
Damn, dude. Wow.
That's exciting, isn't it?
Yep.
And that's from, where it is right now at 304, something like that.
Hey guys, sorry, I got a call and then it made it so I couldn't hear you guys anymore.
Oh, it's all good. Guys, yeah, I would just say for anyone watching, check out lookintoptgc.com if you want to give yourself some FOMO and ape in. These are all just guesses and projections, but it's cool stuff.
Would you like to, since you like the passive aspect of crypto, then we could get into the reflections tab also.
Oh, 100%. I think we can. I just wanted to touch base real quick on the cool thing about like us coining the term and educating people on the X multiplier and how that works is a lot of projects like make projections of how we can do a 100x from here, right? They love talking about those numbers but they actually mechanically never break it down on how it's possible. And really, most of them don't even understand how it's possible using basic liquidity and mechanics. So what I love about our system is we actually have found ways to mechanically show users how easy it is to do 100x from here. Like, we can even show users how much value would need to be injected right now for PTGC to do a 5x, and that's the MoonMap 2.0 calculator, if you wanted to hop over to that. But what I'm getting at is most people don't even understand how this stuff works and mechanically don't even understand how to show users how we are going to get to our destination. They just want to say, hey, this is our destination, and that's it. They don't actually explain how mechanically you're going to get to that destination. And that's what I think super cool about what we're trying to do here is like we have all the things put in play. We mechanically know how we're going to do it. And now it's just about, just striving towards that goal. The machine's already done. The products were delivered 100% complete. And now we're just educating people on the system and making our system stronger with our liquidity web and our buy and burns, etc.
Cool.
Okay. Let's look at the reflections tab. So we'll select PTDC. I think I have a wallet address on my clipboard. Experimental mode will calculate the yields. So here are the tier yields. We'll skip. We need to put in a volume. Zen, what would you like to do for volume? Because this simulates network volume and the yield, that we would garner off that volume.
Yeah. So since PTGC and UFO are volume-based protocols, we can actually make projections into the future of what the APY could be as volume increases and our liquidity web increases on chain. Keep in mind with PTGC, this doesn't include staking. It's actually like 120% more than this if you're a staker, because you're earning twice as much yield when you are a staker, more than twice as much yield when you're a staker. So just recently, like with our current liquidity pool size, we were seeing $500,000 days of volume with PTGC and UFO. And that's actually with very little human interaction and a lot of market maker interaction. What we've noticed is I'd say 80% of our volume actually on chain is from our system that's is the market makers moving the value that's not human reliant. So we can actually speculate out if PulseChain does a 10x from here and our natural volume daily right now is 500,000, we can predict that naturally we'd be around 5 million based on our liquidity web being 10 times bigger, right? So let's start first, Banana, putting it at 5 million, which would just be a natural increase of the PulseChain network of doing a 10x.
Okay, so we're at 5 million, and I want to add that we did have $1 million day in PTDC recently, and we had a $2 million day with UFO, and the yield was pretty exciting. So
yeah, I don't like picking the highest days. I like kind of picking something in the middle because what these are is it's the average throughout the year. But yes, Banana, like what you're saying is we are picking conservative middle numbers, not like the tip of the iceberg kind of stuff. We want to use stuff that we have done repeated times.
Correct. That sounds good. So the yearly return on this bag for a $5 million worth of volume would be 15%, but then it only accounts for the reflections. If the PTTC is staked, you're going to earn more, a little bit more than twice that number. Now
So
let's go.
it'd be roughly like 35%.
Correct.
APY. And again, the amazing part about that coffee is that comes from zero inflation and actual buys on the chart to pay you that APY. So not only is your APY backed by real value, but when that APY is paid out, it's actually increasing the value of the system alone because it has to buy those tokens before paying you those tokens, which is pretty unique to our system.
So this bag is worth right now about $4,000. The annual yield on it would be, and these tokens are staked, would be, let's call that $1,200.
Yeah, go to some of the bigger positions if you can, Banana.
Let's go to, whale and shark. So a whale position in PTTC is it's 3 billion tokens. I'm using round numbers, or $1.2 million in PTTC. The annual yield on that at the $5 million in volume would be $181,000.
Is that for staked or that's just holding?
Just holding. Yeah, so it'd be like
so
almost
so can
400.
you say, so if it's staked, how much would that value be?
About $400,000 per year.
Yeah.
And then for a shark position is $120,000, and the annual yield on that would be about $40,000. Dolphin, $12,000 annual yield. And this is just the single beginning position, right? Annual yield on that would be about $4,000.
This is great. I mean, for people just listening, basically, this is a lot of yield. So numbers are big. It's attractive to hold UFO and PTGC. And a dolphin position actually isn't that much money right now. I think this goes back to what you were saying, Zen, where like the real benefit here is that you're a small subset of the greater PulseChain ecosystem, but one that's actually accruing attention. And a lot of the potential for these things relies in, the ratio of existing people to people that are not in it yet. The smaller amount of people that are in now versus in the future, that's the advantage to all this stuff. So one of these days, these positions could become a lot harder to obtain.
Shall we look at UFO real quick?
Yeah, you can, Banana. And then real quick to chime in on that is it's not only, the fact that no one even really knows about PTDC and UFO, but you also have to factor in the fact that no one really even knows about what we have with PulseChain and PulseX and HEX as well. So
that's true.
We're kind of like a kept secret built on a kept secret, which is super cool because that means we only have upwards to go. For an example, like those prices for the whale position, the dolphin position, like those prices have actually been held down and suppressed due to the PulseChain network being suppressed by just everything going on. If PulseChain does a 10x from here, those prices automatically will become 10 times more expensive. So to get those positions with outside fiat, like obviously if you had PulseChain already and you just ratioed it in, since you'd be up 10x on your PulseChain, it would technically cost you the same amount of PulseChain. But if you're coming in with fresh fiat, it would cost you 10 times the amount to get the same position because everything is ratio based in crypto for the most part. But what I wanted to point out, what Banana was kind of just going over, and we can go over this with UFO, that those APYs were based on just 5 million in volume. That's only a 10x of PulseChain. What happens if PulseChain does 100x? And this might not be the entire bull market like we know, or the entire 4-year cycle. We know that these things move up and down, but let's say hypothetically it gets there for a few months, right? Or maybe even more. Maybe that's where it lands is 100x from here. We know Hex technically landed, I think, 100x up from the floor. So, I think if you're really moon mathy, you can hypothetically say it is possible that we land that. So if PulseChain does 100x, we can automatically just 100x our volume because our liquidity would be 100x the size. If our liquidity is 100x the size, I'll be straight up, like, there'd be no way we wouldn't be getting attention from mainstream crypto influencers. We would have a liquidity web that's over $1 billion in value.
Hmm.
And that would be over $1 billion in value working for all the holders and the price of the token day in, day out. It's kind of the same system that centralized exchanges work off of. They have all this value and then they put all that value to work. They're earning value on that value. But the difference with the centralized exchange is they're the ones making all that value, right? Like, that's their business. So we just took that same business model, we put all the value to work, but it's in a decentralized manner that where all that value garnered goes back to the underlying value of the token and the token holders themselves, making it to
I love
where,
it.
yeah, it's, and we know that the centralized exchange business model works really well, right? Like, they've pretty much started taking over banks at this point. So it makes sense to just mimic what they've done, make it decentralized, make it here on PulseChain, and this thrive with what we know works. Like, a lot of people don't realize this, but the idea of value, right? Like, it's been the same idea of what gives things value has been around for thousands of years. We actually don't need to recreate that idea. So I studied, like, what gives things value? Well, scarcity gives things value. Okay, well, we need something that's scarce here, right? We need something that has what also gives things value. Okay, it has to be tradable for other valuable things. It has to be like other people have to give it value as well. So what do? We pair it with tons of liquidity saying this is the value. So what we did was we paired it with tons of things, giving it the value, saying this is what the market says this is worth. And then we make it really scarce. We make it to where every transaction makes the supply less and less and less. And we make it to where the system, which we were talking about earlier, the demand side, which no one's been able to figure out, and we actually did, is where the demand actually increases as the price goes up. So how supply and demand normally works, coffee, and I'm sure you know this, but for the listener speaking, is there's a chart that actually has an equilibrium of supply and demand. And I'm going to give the illustration of strawberries. When you don't harvest a lot of strawberries in a year, the grocery store will naturally price those strawberries higher. The supply is smaller, so the grocery store will price it higher. Some people will still buy the strawberries at the higher price, but some people will buy blueberries because of them being a cheaper price, which then makes the demand lower, right? And then this is, what creates that equilibrium. Demand actually slowed down because the price went up. But this is the catch. With our system, the demand gets higher because as our price keeps rising and rising and rising, the arbitrage and market makers have to move more money and more money and more money, which buys and burns more of the supply and creates a system that's kind of just a snowball effect on itself. And there's actually a word for it, which I'm spacing on right now, but this is exactly how luxury good and
Veblen good, I believe.
yes, Veblen good. That's the exact same system that luxury goods operate off of. So
It's like when Trump wasn't selling enough of his luxury apartments, so he increased the price, and there was more demand.
Exactly. So this is the same system we're operating off of, and we know
That's crypto as a whole. It's very nice that of you to realize this stuff and be educating people about this kind of thing. It's super important because when you figure this out, it's like, yeah, crypto is a reflexive system, but that also it means that it doesn't behave like. I mean, look at Bitcoin, right? It's like, oh, it's at some level they're like, okay, we've got this thing that costs 6 figures, so I want to go buy the cheaper thing. But at the same time, they also want to make sure people have already bought it for their confirmation bias. I feel like at the end of the day, it's just you're all competing for consciousness and like mental bandwidth or attention or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, it is hard to program. You can't. No one can ever say that they've programmed demand, other than I mean that I think it's kind of a function of effort or marketing and also building, the solid product. But it's just it's the problem that everyone's competing to solve.
yeah. Yeah, it's like, even like, a lot of people don't realize this when they build like a utility or a DeFi based protocol. Usually you need a human to use that utility. And if you don't have a human to use that utility, really the utility means nothing. It's just sitting there waiting to be used. That's what I kind of think is super cool about our utility is it's actually not a utility that a human uses. It just needs the market to do what the market does, and then it turns the utility on.
I love what you said about the automating certain aspects of things, though. Just like AI is automating our life, the more you can automate, like PulseX had the first concept of this with the buy and burn, but now you've got all these things at play, from bots and taxes and liquidity rerouting all over the place. So even without users, like there's things happening.
100%, which, like you said, keeps the music going, right? Because not even only in reflection tokens or buy and burn tokens, or even just standard zero fee based tokens, like in the bear market, the music slows down, and that's kind of what happens in the bear market. But if we can keep that music going to make sure there keeps being seats for everyone and so on and so forth, it creates a more sustainable long system.
I agree, but everything is going to crash inevitably. And I don't want to be like a doomer about it. Like, we just have to expect that there are cycles, but if you build a solid product, like look at what Hex did, even when it did crash, people forget that, like you said, the floor was still 100x up above the all-time low. And I hope the same happens with PTGC and UFO. Even when there is a 80% drawdown in the future, let's hope that it's still, tens or hundreds of X's above these early days.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's any way to have no drawdown in the bear market. I think that's inevitable. But what we can do is create systems to hedge ourselves against it as much as possible.
But in a way, this is what you get when you have a free, open system that's not manipulated. The only reason this doesn't happen in the stock market is because of money printing and because they want to give the illusion of security, the powers that be. When you give people self-sovereignty and the ability to hold their own coins, you're going to get this crazy volatility because it's a direct reflection in the chart of human emotion.
100%. And I think that was why one of my main goals was to create a system that was less dependent on the human emotion side and more dependent on the mechanical side of the system.
So perfect, dude, with the aliens too. It's like that's where we're heading. Like, aliens are just our future selves and big brain and less emotions and all that. And AI is taking over the world. What's your name on Twitter? Am I following you already? If not, I should be.
Yeah, I think you are. It's the Gray 369. So the same thing as I have written in under my little box right there.
Oh yeah, so you're like the main account for the Grace. Okay.
We also have Pulse TGC, which is like what would the word be? Token account. Like, it's not my personal account, it's like the tokens account. So if you want, you can follow both. But my personal account is the Gray 369. Token account is Pulse TGC.
Okay, thanks, man. I'm just kind of wrapping up because I've got to head out. But it was really great talking to both of you, and I haven't really met you or talked to you before, but in this short combo, I've gained a lot of respect for you and what you're doing. So I may or may not just have to ape in to some of these things. Prairie Banana, did you have something to leave us with? You're on mute, brother.
You have 3 minutes?
Yeah, I can do 3.
Okay, because we can do the hold UFO. So let's have a look at what
Pull
that
up your
could
screen,
be.
Banana. Your screen's not
Okay.
up.
Okay, so we'll just keep it apples to apples. Volume set to $5 million in a day. Annual return.
Hey, real quick, Banana. Just for the last 1 minute that we have, let's pull it to 50 million in volume a day, just for the fun of it.
Okay.
Why not?
We'll leave crypto coffee on some extreme moon math.
Just give me some dopamine before I go.
There you go.
This is so. If you think PulseChain is going to 100x, this is pretty much easily obtainable, just mathematically, on how these volume and liquidity webs work. But
so this is a Dolphin wallet. His annual yearly yield at $50 million in volume would be $42,000. That's just for holding. If he holds, it would be, if he LPs, it would be more. And then you can go down and look at, like, a shark position is $65,000. Annual yield would be $201,000. Dolphin, $7,000 annual yield $20,000.
Yeah, go to. Did you do the shark?
I did.
Oh, yeah. And then the whale is obviously crazy. What's the whale?
It is $2 million.
Yeah.
That's like,
Which,
so that's 4x what you're actually holding.
yeah. So the end result is, and this is kind of the funny thing, is if PulseChain is only remotely successful, this machine becomes an absolute monster.
I hope it is. I hope it does. This is one of the projects that I think has the best shot in terms of the altcoins, let's call them PulseChain altcoins. And again, I really appreciate what you guys are doing. I wish I didn't have to go, but I got to start heading out soon. Everybody go follow Prairie Banana on Twitter and the Grace 369. Like, subscribe to my channel. Keep an eye on this one. Pair your EHEX with UFO. Try it out. It's really cool. And these are good guys. All right, they're on your team. So I mean, it might be a not core token, but they're trying to do something for the greater good here. So, any last words?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. It means the world to me, Crypto Coffee. I've been watching you from a long time. You probably don't know this, but I've spent a lot of years studying RH and learning from him, and I've also spent some time learning from you. So I just want to say thank you for honestly adding to my education, which added to the development of PTGC and UFO. So thanks for doing that.
Likewise.
Thank you for having us, Coffee. Really appreciate it.
All right, guys. See you on the next one.
See ya.